Good evening, calling school committee to order. Thursday, April 13th, 2023. First order of business is the reading regarding the recording.
Good evening. This meeting will be recorded and will be posted to YouTube and other social media platforms. By participating in this meeting, you understand that the recording could contain your video stream or your audio stream, including images of yourself or anyone in the room with you. If you choose to enable your video or audio device during the meeting, as well as anything or anyone else that may be in the background could be recorded. The recording could include any opinions you contribute and anything you say about yourself. On occasion, chat within the meeting could also be captured in the meeting recording. Therefore, anyone attending the recorded meeting may have aspects of their personal data recorded if they actively participate or not.
Thank you. Before I do roll call, I'd like to just welcome a new member from Hardwick, Crystal Kelly. Welcome. And before I do roll call for attendance, welcome, and anything you'd like to have to say. I just wanted to welcome you. We'll get you some information in regards to some obligations, and then please feel free to get involved as much as you'd like in subcommittees. I'll speak with you and welcome you. Jessica, the superintendent, are always available for you as well. So is there anything you'd like to say now, or you want to hold off? It's up to you.
No, I'm excited to be a part of the whole group. And I mean, for us, it was important that Ned served the community for a really long time. And I was excited to be able to kind of take the Kelly name into the school committee again. Hopefully for the next 40 years, we'll see.
Well, again, thank you.
He didn't tell you everything.
Well, she told me that she's Nettie's favorite daughter-in-law.
Roll call, please.
Dr. Allen,
Yes.
Mr. Marsh,
Yes.
Mr. Deschamps is not here. Mr. Willannon,
Here.
Ms. Kelly,
Here.
Ms. Garvey,
Here.
Ms. Cartier,
Here.
Mr. Chamberlain's not here. Ms. Cormier,
Here.
Mr. McDonald.
He's not here.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, did
yes,
you-
yes, yep. Mr. McDonald,
Just joining. He's still connecting.
I'll go back to him.
Okay.
Mr. Wiggler.
Here.
Mrs. Thompson. Here. Mr. Nutter,
Yes, here.
Mr. Jean-Francois, I don't believe
He's
it's,
not going to be here.
okay. And Mr. Chairman
Here.
and Mr. McDonald.
Here.
Thank you.
Good. Again, thank you, school committee members, to attending. I know we had our meeting, we moved it around last week and then we mentioned that we may have a meeting tonight strictly dealing with a budgetary perspective. And we have one item this evening. It's the FY24 budget update, and a vote will be required afterwards, I believe. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Wiggler and Cheryl, and we'll go from there. The superintendent.
Good evening. This is our third budget meeting, the first one after the public hearing. We started off our first budget, our preliminary budget was a 10.4% increase. And as a result of our last meeting, we brought it down to a 7.9% increase. And it currently stands at $39,209,041. We are in the process of, we had some House Ways and Means revenue figures came out, and I believe that the principals were working over the course of the last few weeks on their budgets to see if there's any areas they can reduce. And I will now turn this over to Mr. Ball.
Sure.
Are we still at 7.9, Mark?
7.9.
I have to go back. There you go.
So the House Ways and Means budget did come out yesterday. However, those numbers have not been issued on the cherry sheets yet. The allocation by district has not been done. I pulled a couple of strings. I got somebody's cell phone number and she was able to give me our numbers. So they're not supposed to come out until tomorrow afternoon, but we have what we need to get going tonight. The House did add things to the budget and they've made some pretty hefty promises here, although Chapter 70 minimum aid was only increased by $30 per student, so a total of $60 per student for us next year. So that's another $58,530 in Chapter 78. Charter school reimbursements have been funded at $230 million, and this means nothing to me, and it will mean nothing to you until we see what it means for our district itself. But they also increased special education circuit breaker to $506 million. And I've read that takes into consideration the 14% increase in tuition that the commissioner gave to special education schools. So we'll see what happens with that. Rural school aid was almost double to 10 million. It fully funds regional transportation at 107 million at 100% regional reimbursement. I have a comment on that later.
We can't believe that, can we?
Yeah.
No, I do not believe that, Dr. Allen. It also fully funds transportation for homeless students at $28 million. Again, that doesn't mean anything until the cherry sheets come out.
Can I just interject one piece of good news on the rural schools increase? You may remember that when the governor put 7 million in for rural schools, she made it a grant program. The House has reverted to the typical rural schools formula. So that's good news for us because there was some worry around what the criteria for that grant was, as long as that remains through the budget cycle.
So we've not only made some changes to the budget for tonight, we've also made some changes to our projected revenue sources because both of those have assessments to our member towns. So this is a reminder of where we were, like Mr. Wiggler said, where preliminary budget was over $40 million. And in our first round of budget cuts, we brought it down to $39.2 million. For tonight, we are proposing these changes that are in your packet. I think it's also in your drive if you look. We're projecting that we could make cuts of $381,097. That we're changing. Our FTEs will be reduced by 5 FTEs and just short of 1% change from where our budget is currently at. If you want me to go through any of those, I will. There are a couple that I do want to point out to you. Not all of these are cuts either. You'll see that some of them are being, the second one, transfer intervention specialist to ESSER 3. So there is being some changes to other funding sources rather than the general fund budget. But if you take a look at the line, in that same vein, there's transfer to custodian salaries to school property use. And we decided to do that because the CAPS Collaborative is renting a lot more space than they have in the past at a few of their schools. So we are going to have, as we already do, take one Hubbardston custodian and charge it to that rental income. I'm going to take 2 more custodial positions and charge it to the rental income.
That a Ruggles Lane?
One at Ruggles Lane and one at the middle high school, yes. There are changes in technology. Let me skip the second to last one's technology. I'll go back to that in a second. But under that is the contingency account. That is the money that we put aside for negotiations. We're making a reduction to that. That has really nothing to do with ongoing negotiations as much as it goes to we can't afford our budget. The technology hardware. We'd like to do something rather unique with that. We are not saying that we can cut that hardware. We need it. But what I would like to propose to the committee is together with those technology hardware purchases and about $67,000 worth of access points for our infrastructure, I would like the committee to consider using the IT stabilization fund. There's $211,000 in that IT stabilization fund that was first put together back, I believe, 2009, when we tried to get our towns to fund a bond to, introduce technology to all of our schools. And that has been sitting there, and we're at the point where we need to use any funding source that we have available to us. That would require a 2/3 vote of the committee to transfer out of stabilization. There's a little caveat to this, that those access points are eligible for E-rate reimbursement. Now, we won't know if we will get that reimbursement until about next March, I believe. I know Mr. Walsh is online. If I said the wrong month, please join in. But if and when we do get the E-rate reimbursement, I would ask at that time that the committee puts that money right back into the stabilization fund. Dr. Allen?
Dr. Allen.
I guess the only concern I would have with that is it next year when the federal funds go away and we expect to have much less money coming in next year? And this is sort of the last year of having money come to us?
Yes, the ESSER funds will end in June of 2024. They really end in September of 2024, fiscal 25, but our plan is to use them by the end of next fiscal year. We have, however, planned to have money available in E&D as well as school choice that will at least get us through FY 25. And we are praying that we will finally get out of hold harmless debt by FY 26 so that we will start seeing the benefit, the full benefit of the Student Opportunity Act.
Okay, so you have a plan and it seems reasonable and it seems doable.
I believe that is reasonable. It also helps that those $67,000 worth of access points could be reimbursed up to $60,000 limit by, I believe it's 40%. So that's putting money back into that
Back in the fund.
stabilization account that can be used.
Okay,
But we wouldn't know until March, you said, around.
I believe it's March that we will know whether or not we'll get it.
But we typically do get E-rate reimbursement. It's not a big risk to assume that we will get it because it's something that we've gotten, I think, every year. So
Yes, but the requirement is that we usually, the E-rate reimbursement we get right now is on our network connectivity for all of our schools. And we have not gotten that in the past. And what we use that reimbursement for at that time is to fund our refresh cycles and our hardware cycles. So yeah, we have not gotten that in a number of years.
well, it was just my concern was dipping into something this year when I had thought next year was going to be much more problematic.
It's actually 26 that will be very problematic, maybe.
if we don't get the fund.
If we don't get this funded. So that would bring our budget to $38.8 million. On the revenue side, as I said earlier, our chapter 78 increased by $58,530, and I have made that adjustment on the projected revenue. We are also increasing regional school transportation. Many of you will remember when Jay Sullivan was online and he was talking to us and he told us that, listen, he didn't have the numbers that he could put in the full value of the reimbursement for transportation on the governor's cherry sheet. Well, we found out that what he really was basing it on was FY 21, and he was putting it in at 75%. Our true reimbursement will be on FY 23 expenses, this year's expenses. And the governor put it in at 90% reimbursement. As I say down here, 100% reimbursement is doubtful. But we don't believe, the superintendent and I had a conversation about this, it's highly doubtful that the Senate will go any lower than the governor. So I have made a change in this by taking last year's eligible expenses and increasing them by 2.5%, because if you remember, our transportation contract is level for 3 years. And then for this year was a 2.5% increase. So I raised those eligible expenses by 2.5%, and I'm applying a 90% reimbursement, and that's why I'm coming up with a new number. I think that's reasonable as well. And then we had in the past version of the budget, we put in using $500,000 from E&D. Superintendent and I propose that we go to $750,000 at this point.
How much is in there?
You wait till I get that screen. I have a little note in there. It has been certified at $1,575,901. So we about half of it. So without the actual cherry sheet data, it is unknown if changes were made in the House Ways and Means budget that affected required local contribution of member communities. Changes to that required local contribution impact the assessment calculations. So what we may need to take a look at when the Senate budget comes out is where any changes made, because we'll need to use those new required
Mhm.
local contributions in the final calculation that really goes to the town meeting floor.
If you were anticipating that would. When the cherry sheet numbers come.
When the cherry sheet numbers come out now,
it's gonna
No,
stay basically
because-
where it's been, huh?
the budget, yes, our revenue may change, and actually if our charters, sorry, if our circuit breaker reimbursement increases, that's treated as a state grant. So what you actually do is reduce your budget to put those expenses there. But it all depends on what the other revenues come out to be. At this point, we don't see where we're going to make cuts into this budget without losing programs. That would be the next round of discussions, is losing programs. So with the changes to the budget, as I showed on slide 5, and the changes to our projected revenues, this is where, I can make that bigger or not, but this is where the assessment levels stand at this point. Barry 7.67, Hardwick 4.71, Hubbardston 9.02, New Braintree 3.88, Ocam 9.46, for an overall increase in assessment of 7.58. The reason that Hubbardston and Ocam is so high, if you think back to public hearing where I have all my charts and graphs, Hubbardston and Ocam saw increases in the required local contribution based on the town's wealth and property values. They also were the two towns that saw the largest increases in student enrollment. So those are the two main components of the assessment calculation. So when you have increases in two of those segments, when other towns had reduction in enrollment, this is how the assessments go so crazy as compared with each other. So that's all I have tonight.
Carol, when the cherry sheets come out, will we get the towns will get their minimum local contributions at the same time?
Yes, I was told by the person that actually releases them that they should be out by tomorrow afternoon. So that's what we have for you tonight. Other questions? The last slide, it just showed you where we are in the process. The Senate Ways and Means budget generally comes out in June. If any of those figures that I showed on the first slide do not agree between the House and the Senate, then they go to conference committee. And that could go all the way to the summer before we know what happens to the real numbers.
So I think, Cheryl, it's fair to say, correct me if I'm wrong, that these assessment numbers will change again before town meeting. There's 100% certainty that those will change because they don't include the new required.
If there is.
local- If there is a change.
Our budget may also change because the woman I spoke to today said one of the reasons the cherry sheets are being held up is because there was an enrollment reporting error for charter school students. And so DESE is recalculating everyone's charter school assessment. If your charter school assessment increases, so does your reimbursement on the revenue side. If it decreases, so does your revenue on the other side. So when those numbers finally come out for charter school, we'll see a change most likely in both revenue as well as expenses.
Yeah, what does charter school have to do with us?
If students who live in our 5 towns enroll in the charter schools, I have a chart that I show when we first start our budget meetings. The district pays the tuition for them to go there. So we get reimbursement on a sliding scale for each student. There's 2 numbers in our budget for paying for students that go out of our district to attend charter schools, or they go and choose to attend another school under school choice. The district pays that tuition bill by a reduction to our chapter 70.
Well, that's the voucher thing. Now, we have, what, 60, 80 kids doing that?
Going out
Not that bad.
for, I don't know the total number. I don't know the total number off the top of my head. It's definitely in Cheryl's presentation, her public hearing presentation.
And then the charter school reimbursement, is it only on a 3-year
Yeah. Is it-
to the district?
Yes.
So,
You get a higher amount on the first year the student is at the charter school, less the second year, less the third year, the fourth year they're there, we get no reimbursement.
no reimbursement thereafter.
You still have to keep paying. You still have to keep paying,
Yes.
but no reimbursement.
Do we,
Right.
Correct.
any kids in charter school?
I'm looking it up, Dr.
You're looking it up.
It's taking me a minute to get there. This October 1, and this is a rolling enrollment count. So 4 times a year, I believe it's every month. Every month they take the actual FTEs. So as of the October 1 count, so what really the first quarter, we had 65 students in school choice out.
Yeah, that's about what I was thinking.
And in
School choice.
charter, we have 11.5.
So putting the two together, the 60 to 80 is about what our outflow is.
And then the inflow of school choice, was it closer to 280,
280,
280, something like that?
No, actually went down.
260,
It went down.
260?
That was
Okay.
last year. I think,
Mhm.
So it's going down, just tells me, so we will see a reduction. Every month we get a portion of our school choice in as revenue, every month, choice and charter. And it gets adjusted each month by the number of students. And just told me we're down to 257.
Well, originally it was 5,000 a voucher person. Is that what it still is? Or
For school choice.
Yes, we get $5,000 per student unless they're on an IEP. We also get the additional special education costs.
well, that hasn't changed about 20 years then.
Never.
Since in the inception, right?
93. Yeah. So are there any questions for Cheryl or the superintendent? Again, you're doing 2 things. You were making an adjustment on the overall budget and as well on the revenue perspective, as well as taking, you believe, an additional 250,000 out of E&D to lower assessments at this time.
Yes.
Superintendent mentioned this will move again, but as we spoke last week, that you are looking to get assessment letters out, making, which we have to by law at a certain period of time. If we make this adjustment now on both ends, the overall budget as well as the revenue side of the budget, the next iteration or the next review of the budget, when are you predicting to do that? Are you waiting for
Senate.
the Senate? Okay,
And if the Senate budgets don't match the House numbers, we need to make conservative adjustments in case the Senate is higher. And when they go to conference, they make an agreement somewhere low. I never want to, that's with the regional transportation. I find it highly unlikely we'll get 100% reimbursement. Nobody is behind that. Nobody at DESE. I doubt the legislature is really behind it. So I didn't use 100%. I used 90. I know they won't, the Senate won't probably not go down lower than the
Than
government.
90, yeah.
But I'm not willing.
I predict.
Does Ann Goby have anything to say about what the Senate's going to do?
Nothing specific, I mean, she recognizes all of the challenges that we're facing and I think, is going to work very hard as she always does to get the numbers up, but the last meeting that I was at where Ann and other legislators were there, they said what we know. Usually the governor's budget is where we get the least revenue. And through the House and the Senate, it continues to go up. So that gives me a little hope that we'll see a little more revenue in the Senate budget. But, they can't promise anything. They don't know until the process plays out. So I know that area legislators are very aware of how challenging this budget is for their municipalities and for their school districts. And, if you just listen to conversations like these that are happening in communities all around us, similar conversations are happening.
I think they're much more drastic.
Well, they are, but I mean, we may get there, Dr. Allen. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. We may get to those drastic conversations. I think it's premature to get there right now because we're hoping that we can make this work. But I mean, there are districts that are, I heard today, cutting athletics, music programs, and these are districts not very far from here. I am certainly hopeful that we will get to the point that we can get a number that our communities can handle and that we can maintain our programs. That's the goal. And, but it's going to take, as it always does, it's going to take us longer to get there than our communities would like. They want a number now. I'm sure they want a number now that they can plan on. And I don't think we just don't have enough information to give them a solid number that we know is where we're going to land. Because as Cheryl pointed out, there are so many variables still to work out with the state budget process. So we're continuing to work at it. We're watching the numbers. We're continuing to advocate and with our legislators, and that will be ongoing.
How comfortable do you feel with taking half of E&D?
Well, Cheryl and I spent a lot of time talking about it. It is, we have had, after our E&D balance is certified using 750,000, we've had lower E&D balances
Yeah, we
in the
have.
past. And so we are comfortable with that level of E&D use, given that we're continuing to try to build the other reserves that we have, the school choice reserve. But admittedly, school choice reserve is growing at a slower pace because our school choice enrollment has not increased. Or is actually decreasing. So we're doing the best we can to use reserves in what we think is a prudent manner, but recognizing that if we are going to maintain programs, that's something that we have to do. We really have to do that.
Well, if area school districts are cutting music and athletics and things like that, I would think that would make us attractive, even more attractive for these voucher kids.
It could, I'm certainly hoping that in those communities, some of those communities are proposing 2.5 overrides.
They'll never get it.
They may be successful, and if they are, I was at a meeting, I think Cheryl and I were at a meeting not long ago where someone, a state official said something to the effect there are going to be more districts on 112 budgets this year than ever before. Now, we certainly don't have a crystal ball, but I think that is the tenor of the conversations that superintendents are having, and that with their legislators, this is a very serious problem. And for districts that are not reaping any benefits from Student Opportunity Act. And there are, I think, 119 of them or in that range. And so, and some of the communities are trying to pass overrides. And if those overrides pass, I'm sure those districts will restore those programs.
Those overrides aren't going to pass.
Well, I think it depends on the community, but
Where do you ever see them pass?
Well,
Okay.
they did pass an OCAM. Yeah,
We're okay.
So there are some districts that I've heard that are actually doing quite well under this budget. Is that true, or is, I mean, not out here maybe, but sort of more toward Boston?
yes, because of the Student Opportunity Act. There are districts, I have one superintendent who is my colleague and I communicate with, who is a superintendent in an urban district, who made the statement to me, in this fiscal year, he has more money than he can spend. He does not know how he's going to spend the money that he has, partially because he can't get employees. You know, they're struggling with the same issue that we are, that, you know, that they just can't fill all of their positions. But
He has the money to do
he's
so.
going to have the money, he has the money to fill every position that he has and more. And so there are the districts that are getting SOA money, they are in that position. And so it's about, you know, about 2/3, right? There's about 350 school districts in the state. About 2/3 of them are getting SOA funding to various degrees. Some are getting tens of millions of dollars and some are getting much less than that. But there are also about 1/3 of the districts that are not getting anything. And we used to be, you know, our hold harmless debt used to be at the close to second, we were the second largest hold harmless debt. If you look at the list of districts that are now in hold harmless debt, we are nowhere near the top. I think we're probably, I don't know, I'm gonna say in the,
30.
oh, you did, okay. In the, right, I was gonna
30s,
say
in the
we're in the
30s.
thirties, right? So I guess that's progress. And I do, you know, we will eventually get out of this hold harmless debt. But the great decrease in our hold harmless debt last year was due in great part to the addition of the preschool and increasing our student enrollment by 60 some odd students because of the additional preschool classrooms that we're able to add. So, you know, our increase in student enrollment now is really about more people with families moving into our district and enrolling their children in our schools. And so we don't have a lot of control over that, but we are hosting a school choice open house in the next beginning of May, couple of weeks from now, hoping to continue to, you know, attract increasing numbers of school choice students, which it's not a great revenue source, but it does help us fill empty seats in our classrooms and bring in a small amount of money for that. So it doesn't cost us more to educate those children and we get a little revenue for it. So, and that's not a bad thing. And it's also given opportunities to students that they may not have in their home district.
Before we go over to Mark for a potential motion, Cheryl, there are other handouts in the packet. Can you highlight? So not only Crystal can be kind of brought up to speed of where we are and what documents mean. And again, Crystal, this is one of the toughest parts of our job as we're dealing with the budget process. And not only will we find fair, reasonable, and what is needed without cutting programs, we also are very sensitive to the needs and understanding of the towns, what they can afford and not afford. But glad that you're here. Will help you in the knowledge of getting to the know of how this funding formulas work and our obligations. So Cheryl, could you outline what else we have?
Yeah, could I get the screen for a second?
Of course.
Just.
We have, I can pull it up on here.
Is it in the drive?
Everything's in the drive.
No, but
No, no, that's,
okay, so I won't be able to use my little graph. Do you have
That's
that?
probably in one of the, that's probably in a drive.
I'll move on. So in your packet, there's a document that's 26 pages long. In the blue bar, it says line item budget, FY '24 line item budget. This is the way in which the school committee voted to take a look at their budget. The actual budget document itself from the system is a 270-page document. So each of the categories here are subtotaled by the fourth segment of all the account numbers. If you look at the first account number, Crystal, it's 001.5.99.1110. So that 1110, that 4-digit code is what's referred to at DESE as the function code. We are mandated to use those numbers. So those are subtotaled by that 4-digit code. You see that school committee 1110. So that subtotal that is highlighted in gray on the line item report is then brought over to the report, the 2-page document that's highlighted in gold. Let's take a look at school committee alone. The first subcategory of school committee 1110 is the first line on this report, 1110. Okay, so those subtotals come over onto this report, and then they're further subtotaled by the format by which this school committee decided it was going to approve a budget or allow budget changes, transfers between categories. So you take the gold subtotals on this report, bring it over to the 1-page document in blue. And the same way it goes. The one that is highlighted on that intermediary report is now a line item on this report. And then this report is subtotaled by what's called undesignated and regular education costs. Those are terms that the Department of Education uses. And that's one of the ways that we balance our budget and approve our budget. Then we have special education costs, and then debt is by itself. And when you add those three subtotals together, you can see in the 5th column over, which says FY '24, PP3 is our proposed budget number 3. For the April assessments is 38,827,934. Then I do some comparisons between this version that I brought to you tonight to the last version, and then this version to last year, which is the FY '23. You see we're 6.91%. Wow. So I created a little graphic that I show in meetings, and it just does exactly what I just said, how we subtotal our reports and how you read them. So this is all available to the public on our website. I'm sure Jess will get it up there sometime tomorrow or Monday. And we're going to have a new website soon, so we'll have our own area where the budgets will all be listed, and also the quarterly reports will be, just for transparency purposes. This is the system-generated report that I use to create these documents. This is 43 pages long. Like I said, the detail behind it is 270 pages. Please don't ask me to go through it.
Okay, this,
And Crystal, all of the presentations from the very beginning are on our website too, under administration and budget FY '24. So.
Anyone else have a question on the numbers? So together with the budget adoption, I don't know if it matters, but I think you kind of have to take the stabilization use vote first. Otherwise, the other one is null and void.
Okay, Mark.
So vote to use IT stabilization fund in FY '24. The motion is to move to appropriate $102,997.25 from the IT stabilization fund to purchase IT hardware and access points during the 2023/2024 school year. Any such funds reimbursed through the E-rate program shall be redeposited into the stabilization fund subsequent to the vote of the school committee.
Second.
Okay,
This is needs a 2/3 vote in a stabilization account. You need a 2/3 vote to put money in and 2/3 vote to take the money out.
okay. Any other further comments? Seeing and hearing none, roll call, please.
Dr. Allen,
Yes.
Mr. Marsh,
Yes.
Mr. Lenon,
Yes.
Ms. Kelly,
yes.
Ms. Garvey,
Yes.
Ms. Cartier,
Yes.
Ms. Cormier,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
Mr. Wiggler, Mrs. Thompson. Yes. Mr. Nutter,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes. Mark,
This is now the motion for the budget adoption for April assessment letters. Motion is to move to adopt FY 24 budget in the amount of $38,827,944, on which to calculate April assessments to member communities as required by Mass General Laws, Chapter 71, Section 16.
Second,
okay,
Projected revenue sources include $16,938,538 in Chapter 78, $1,285,654 in regional transportation reimbursement, $960,942 in district revenues and reserves, including $750,000 from excess and deficiency E&D to offset member town assessments, and $10,000 from excess and deficiency E&D for a contribution to the OPEB trust fund.
still second.
still second, okay. And just again, I know, just to make a quick note, Mark, you mentioned 38,827,944.
43.
No, I'm sorry, it is 44. When you take this many accounts that are then become all rounded to full numbers, it's rounding. So I'll adjust. It is 44.
44, okay.
Yes.
Just want to make sure, because I saw two different numbers.
We don't lose a penny.
That's $1.
It's $1.
It's $1.
It's $1.
So, okay, with that adjustment, not a problem. Motion made, seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, roll call, please.
Dr. Allen? Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mr. Willian?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Garvey?
Yes.
Ms. Cartier?
Yes.
Ms. Cormier?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mr. Wiggler?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Nutter?
Yes.
And Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Before we adjourn, there's one more document here on the projected revenue sources from Quabbin. Do you want to highlight this document as well?
I'm sorry.
And then we'll adjourn afterwards since we've made the adjustments.
So the way in which the projected revenue sources are put together is by type of funding source. So you see the first block is from our state aid. And so those are the numbers that changed tonight with the House Ways and Means number, the chapter 78, and the second line, chapter 71, which is transportation aid, also known as regional transportation reimbursement. So those two numbers have changed. And then the next section is for district revenue. So those are our revenues and reserves that we are putting towards funding the budget. And we've increased the second line, excess and deficiency E&D from 500,000 to 750.
Mhm.
The next section actually takes the three blocks. The required local contribution of the member town operating assessment, that is what is sent to us from the Department of Revenue, Division of Local Services. And those numbers come directly from reports that the town files with the Department of Revenue. The above required local contribution is a calculation that gets done. So when you take the budget number and you subtract the revenue sources that are coming from state aid, revenue sources that are coming from district revenue, and the required local contribution, you have an amount that does not have a funding source. And that amount of money is what is apportioned to each member town based on their student enrollment this year as of October 1st. So that's where that fluctuation comes by. Some towns have lost resident enrollment while others have gained resident enrollment. And then you add those two blocks together and it comes down to total member town operating assessment. Earlier in our budget process this year, we had a capital budget of $561,000, all of which has been cut. So that's all. Then, because we did have capital assessment, I retotaled these total member assessments. After that is long-term debt revenue. We have one project that still remains to have debt on it, and it is when we replaced the atrium roof on the middle high school, and then we repaneled the whole outside of the middle high school. And there's still, I think that goes until FY 28.
I think so.
I'd have to look that up as well, but that is calculated by a formula as well. But that's based on the number of students each town has residents enrolled in the district from K to 12, actually pre-K to post-grad. rather than going to just the elementary school or the high school. And then it all totals up, and this number here that's on this report, 944.
Yep, 944,
That's
yep.
just the budget, and it will show that the revenue sources are also going up by the same amount as the budget, so it's balanced.
Required local contributions, they are historically high. Is that true or not?
Historically.
Are they higher than they were in past years
Yes,
for each town?
yes.
Well, yes, but there's a huge calculation involved. Just, can you bring that up?
Yeah, I know, it's a property value.
Right, so that's adjusted every year. And then again, if you go back to the public hearing presentation,
I'm just wondering if,
well, everything goes up, Mr. Nutter. Have you ever seen anything
Yeah, I
like that? Let's see. Let's go to
I
slide,
was wondering if you could produce
slide number 91.
a history of like the
Just
last years. Would that illustrate anything for us or not? I don't mean right now, but
I just want to.
What are you asking?
if you could, if maybe you could make a history, like when we go to town
I
meeting,
believe I already have it. I just
Yeah.
want to get to the screen first and then, what did you close that?
No, well, I did, yeah, but I'm getting there.
yeah, I'm not saying right this minute, but maybe in the
I
future,
believe I have that already done. I
and maybe,
showed that as well.
maybe a
Feel like
side
I'm
by
going
side
back
with
to
the,
square one tonight. See if you have the number, just.
Page 91.
Each one of our 5-member towns this year is below target share,
okay, all right, I remember we talked about that, yeah,
which means the required local contribution should be higher.
Should be high, right?
okay. Yeah.
Everyone is behind, everyone is, with the implementation of the Student Opportunity Act and foundation budgets being increased so dramatically. Part of the formula is chapter 78 minus the foundation budget minus chapter 78 is required local contribution. So when that budget goes up so much, the required local contributions are going to go up. You'll see, this is the page that does our OCAM, and I know you can't see it,
I still have it at home.
but this is the formula that calculates what each regional required local contribution should be. And again, for OCAM alone, let's see if I can make this bigger because I can't see it on my laptop. So OCAM should be, their target local share is 56.37%, and they're contributing at 51.67. So it should be 5% higher.
Oh, okay.
Right, but now, as you're saying that, when the state calculates, they don't calculate going at 5%. They let towns go increment or slowly or a percentage.
It only if they're below, so
Right.
in that yellow box, and I know you probably can't see it very good because I can't see it.
No, you can't.
Okay, so the shortfall, if the shortfall is what? If your shortfall is between 2.5 and 7.5%, you get a 1% increment from what the formula calculates. So
Call it effort.
you should have been at 56.37. Your formula comes to 51.18, so you should have been charged an extra percentage. But if you fall short, if you're greater than 7.5, which OCAM is not, you would have got a 2% increment charge. And your question regarding, do I have history? I believe it's already done, so I could get that to you as whenever you'd like. Historical data, state. I have assessment data. My historical data sheet has chapter 70, state aid, our budget, state aid is percentage of the budget, use of END, and assessment increase. It does not have required local contribution.
Is that something that could be done without too much work for us if we need that, to articulate that at town meetings if we need it.
There's no work for you.
I know, aside from
It would take- it would take-
speaking.
This is the problem that can arise,
Okay,
okay? A regional school district is treated much differently than a town
Right.
or a city, okay? So as the budget moves between the governor's budget, the House, the Senate, and conference committee, if they make any changes to chapter 78 or any of the other components that require local
everything out
contributions.
the window.
However, if it changed in the House budget, we are mandated by DESE regulation to use those new numbers in our next round of budget discussions.
Right.
We've had to do that, and it's ugly. I think you remember Dr. Marshall saying, they went to the legislature and said, you cannot do this, you cannot do this, it's killing our member towns. They did it for 1 year, they didn't do it. If a regional school district has their budget approved and the House or Senate change those numbers, you don't have to go back to them and change the numbers. And that never happens for us. We never have it approved. We have very late town meetings.
Right,
I had a business manager, now district's gonna escape me, a business manager contacted me 2 weeks ago. He was going into a 1/12 budget. What's the process, he asked me. So I said, oh, I have a whole highlighted document for you. He was already done. They had March town meetings. There are a lot of districts that have April town meetings, May town meetings. We go right to the end of June. Lucky for us, because we need every dollar we can get out of the budget process. But there are some that will have their budget passed by the required 2/3 of their member towns. And the House or Senate numbers may change, and they don't have to. So if I go back and get the history of what DESE has online or DOR has online,
yeah, it's not gonna,
it may not match a document
Correct.
that I did 3 years ago, and I don't want to be called on it,
no, I hear you. I hear you.
because they won't match.
Lee?
Yeah, so, you have to decide if you want to approach something or to state something at town meeting, you have to decide what you want to throw out there. I mean, this was an hour presentation. I've been sitting here for 20 odd years,
Right.
and I still have to pay extreme attention to what Cheryl says. And I know her stuff is right, and maybe I'm, the one that needs the most spoon feeding here, but I've been used to this. You stand up at a town meeting, you try and throw 10% of what she's saying, you've lost them. I mean, you've lost them.
Right,
So you have to look at the numbers that people can grasp, here's how much the state, if you want to run 10 years of something, here's what the state gave everybody 10, 12, 15 years ago, here's what they're giving now. You see the decrease. You have to give something that's somewhat simplified, for lack of a better term, that people can get there with.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to have an hour at town meeting. If they give you 5 to 8 minutes, you're lucky.
Yeah.
So you have to shoot out what you want to shoot out. You have to make sure it's relatively simple to follow. And there will still be people who are like either in disbelief or it's like, oh gee, I don't understand it. But to try and go through a whole bunch of, let's take 10 years of this and 12 years of this, 15 years of that, you lose them after 5 minutes. I mean, you have to decide what's important to put out there.
So I have to say that I think our greatest gain in getting support from a member town in the last 10 years was from the town of Ocam. Because not only Mr. Nutter, as a school committee member, but they had 2 finance committee members,
Mhm.
Claire Hendra and
Steve Levere.
Paul.
No, Rochette, Mr.
Oh,
Oh,
Rochette.
Mr. Rochette.
They attended seminars that DESE and Department of Revenue put on. And they began to understand the complexity of the formula. And they turned from being adversaries to helping us inform the town voters in Ocam of what it means. Right now, we're dealing with someone who does not care, said to, do not care what the formula is, I don't like our number.
Hmm.
Well, I'm sorry, but, and I guess the comment, Ms. Chamberlain isn't here, but I guess the comment is, when Cheryl Duval retiring, because maybe the process will change when she's gone. I don't have control over anything, 0. I don't control anything. But he doesn't care to learn, and it's not going to be helpful for us on the town floor.
Is that helpful?
That is, yes.
Okay. Dr. Allen?
Yeah, I think the most helpful, simple thing I have ever heard here is that with the state portion of our budget staying the same or going down, whatever percentage we go up, the town has to take the whole thing.
Correct.
Mhm.
So if we go up X number of dollars, the state portion stays the same, the town has to pay 100% of X. The state doesn't pay their portion of the raise. And I say that for new committee members, because I think that's the simplest, easiest way of describing to somebody what our situation is.
It is, but they don't want to hear that. You know, they still think there's some sort of voodoo out there that's not right.
Yes, they
Right.
do.
Right?
Right.
Absolutely.
You know, when you say the state used to give us $10, but now they're only giving us $5, so the town has to make up the difference. They don't get that.
In fiscal '02, the state aid as a proportion of our budget was 64.8%. We got 65% of the revenue we needed from the state. This year it's 44%.
Right.
So if our budget is going up by $100, we're gonna get 44% from the state, but the other 56% is coming from our towns. When we only got, let me get you that number. When we only get our increase in chapter 78 is 0.7%,
This year,
0.7%. So if that's 44% of our revenue comes from them, but we're only getting an increase of less than 1%.
right?
That budget increase of 7% becomes 14%. I mean, if you bring it down to a dollar level, people will understand a little bit better.
I remember the chart in one of your other presentations, said over 17 years, the increase in revenue was 7.44%. But the increase in what the towns had to pay was 99% over that same 17-year period. I mean, that's just a staggering number to me. And
My point
17%
about the
increase
state
over
stays the same.
7% over 17 years is nothing. It's like less than 0.5%. I think.
Well, the state's amount of money for us each year has steadily decreased every single year since FY02. Every single year.
And what you just said, you have that in the, on the public hearing, you have that under the Quabbin State aid history from FY02 to FY24. So it is in here, that shows very clearly, which has been in for at least past 2 or 3 years. I think you've been putting that every year and putting that in the chart. Sorry, I've been here for 16 and I apologize. But this is one of the best charts.
FY02 forward, this is all my work.
And this is one of the best charts that we use when we do go and speak, and not only town meeting, but when you talk to folks that, as Dr. Allen just alluded to, when at one point the state gave us more monies and their obligations, and they have less than that. Remember the year when Governor Patrick cut us in June, $1 million, whatever the heck it was? And then, we had to make adjustments all that summer. And then I believe that was another 1/12 year for us, maybe.
That was FY09. Our budget was cut in June of 1.8 million, but it was filled with federal funds. So we
Yeah.
had to scramble.
So it's on page 55. And that's one of the best information to be able to understand, as Lee is alluding to.
Yeah, that's something.
Peggy says they refer to it as voodoo. I
Well,
refer to it as
yeah.
math. It's math.
I know, I totally
Right.
agree, but they don't want to hear it. They just totally block it.
Well, they need-
Yeah, the focus, unfortunately, I think the focus on the town side is our budget. They don't really consider the revenue side of the picture, and that's
Right.
that's the problem. So our real problem is not that our budget is increasing extraordinarily or exponentially. It's that the revenue to support it is shifting from the state to the local government. And that's the bottom line. And we don't have control over that, nor do the towns. But the focus, I think there's likely a mindset out there that, well, if your revenue is decreasing, then your budget should decrease proportionately. That's not possible. right?
And if
Just-
the number of kids decrease, the budget should go down.
Yes, yes, sir.
Which is equally not possible.
Agreed.
And something that I think that we've all spoken highly and continue to support is the programming at Quabbin. Not only that brings the school choice children that for some reason are attending here that see the good programming, but with ROTC, AP, IB, sports, music,
theater,
the arts, theater. Geez, I think,
around the
I
world.
think last week, we just heard we got the pathway for business. Here we are again. Administration goes after the grants everywhere they can. And we not only do we have manufacturing, we have business now. And then what's the third?
IT.
IT, the IT. So we already have
And
three.
when our
partners.
kids go around the world too.
Mhm.
And our
Yeah,
kids,
there was a thing, they're going to France. There was a thing on Facebook today, they're going to France.
Mhm.
Washington DC kids are coming back.
coming back tonight.
Good night.
So,
Yeah, but those could and could not be selling points to our local community.
True.
Heading around the world. I mean, they don't
They're
realize
paying
they
for
got
that.
their own fundraising.
They
And
are.
there's a lot of other issues related to it. But when they hear that, they're over in France right now, there's
Mhm.
some people have a strange reaction to that. And the bottom line is, Dr. Allen's right. The simplest number is, we used to get 67%. Now we get
44%.
Right, I mean, that's still something, and the number of kids that come here versus the kids that go out. So I mean, if somebody really listens to it, they understand that, it's really not our fault and we still provide a quality education.
Yes, we do.
If I could just give an example. In FY '20, when we finished, our budget was up 1.9%.
Mhm.
The state gave us, let's see, I have to do the math.
While she's calculating that, Barry members just contacted me. They want to do a scholarship thing the first Monday in May. So I figure, I would say Ruggles Lane, first Monday in May, 6:30.
Yeah, we'll get a notice. Okay, we'll get,
Yeah, well, it's just
I
since
just didn't
everybody's
wanna-
here.
participate since it's not on the agenda to start talking about it. So that's why I just want to,
Well, that's
we'll
why
go
she
through
was
Jeff's.
agitated.
That's why, yeah.
So the budget increase for FY '20 was 1.9%. That was our budget increase. The state only gave us an increase of 0.35% in additional chapter 78. That equaled assessment increases to Hubbardston of 6.3% and New Braintree 6.2%. And they would say to us, why is your budget up 6.2%? Our budget is not up 6.2%. Our budget's up by
1.9.
1.9%. And that's what they focus on their assessment as being our budget, and that's just not the case.
Good.
In the
Any,
same year, Hardwick saw a reduction of 1.8% in their assessment. It all depends on how many of your kids are going to school and how wealthy you are based on your town income and your town property values.
And Cheryl created a very interesting chart. You may remember last year, we were trying to address the misconception that she just described. And so she created a table and a graphic that tried to point out that there was not a correlation, a predictable correlation between our budget increase and individual town assessment increases on any given year. And we presented that to all of the finance committees in our meetings last spring with them. I'm not sure it helped, but it is quite, right, it's,
There's really no
there's
correlation.
no correlation at all.
okay,
All
right.
Yeah, I mean, and we pointed out certain similar years. So in a year, for example, I'm making these numbers up, but in a year where our budget increase was 1.9%, a town might have a 6% increase in their assessment. In another year where we had a 2% budget increase, essentially the same budget increase, the town assessment might have been 3%. So, we help them try to look at, look, these 2 years, our budget increase was very, very similar, but look at the disparity in your town assessment in those same years where what we control, the budget increase was exactly the same. So I think we could, that is another piece of information when we work with town officials that we have as a resource that we can to try to help them understand. That isn't something that we would obviously discuss at town meeting, but.
Exactly. Is there any other questions for Cheryl or Mark or anybody?
Will we adjourn?
Adjourn, is there a second?
Sure.
And good evening and thank you this evening.